They called me the family piggy bank for 3 decades, and I let them. Until the day I discovered their Christmas miracle was funded by my forged signature. What happened next at that holiday table didn't just end dinner, it detonated their entire world. My name is Samantha, Sam to anyone who actually cared to know me, and for 30 years I was the invisible one, the dependable sister, the boring daughter who worked her sensible office job while everyone else chased their grand ambitions. I wasn't the one they called to celebrate. I was the one they called when the credit cards got declined. This particular Christmas was meant to mark my exit, a quiet goodbye before my January transfer to Seattle, a promotion I'd earned through actual work, not borrowed dreams. I had my speech prepared, something diplomatic about new opportunities and fresh starts. What I didn't anticipate was them handing me the nuclear option on a silver platter, right there between the roasted turkey and the candied yams. The Fletcher family Christmas pageant was always the same production. My mother, Patricia, conducted the orchestra of perfection with her fake smile and real control issues. My father, James, played the wise patriarch role, nodding sagely while the money disappeared. My older sister, Diana, was the star performer, the entrepreneur with revolutionary ideas that never quite revolutionized anything. Her husband, Tyler, served as the handsome accessory, all white teeth and empty conversation, and me? I was the stagehand in the shadows, invisible until someone needed a financial miracle. The air in their oversized suburban palace felt thick that evening, heavy with something I couldn't name yet. I pulled up in my practical 9-year-old Honda, the car they constantly suggested I trade for something less humiliating. I'd brought a single gift, a contribution to a women's shelter made in their names. They were going to despise it. That was exactly the idea. Everything in that house screamed borrowed money. The crystal chandelier that could have paid someone's rent for a year. The designer furniture arranged just so. The massive tree drowning in silver and white ornaments that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. It looked expensive because it was expensive. I just wasn't convinced anyone had actually earned it. Sam, there you are. My mother's greeting was a performance, air kissing the space near my cheek. That's a comfortable dress. The word comfortable in her mouth was an insult wrapped in silk. Traffic was clear, actually. I handed her the wrapped donation certificate. Merry Christmas, Mom! She felt its weight, her smile freezing into something brittle. How unique. She gestured toward the avalanche of glossy packages beneath the tree. My contribution looked like a ransom note at a royal wedding. I found my father in his study, already working on what looked like his third whiskey. Sam! Perfect timing. Your sister was explaining her new venture. Some kind of platform for, what was it, Diana? Diana sprawled in the leather chair that used to belong to our grandfather and waved her manicured hand dismissively. It's complicated, Dad. Think blockchain meets social commerce with an AI twist. We're in serious talks with investors. She shot me a condescending smile. Maybe Sam can explain it better. She's good with spreadsheets and filing things. I handle investment portfolios for institutional clients, I said, keeping my voice level. It wasn't the first time I'd corrected this particular fiction. Right, my father agreed, as though I'd admitted to sorting mail. Steady work. That's the important thing. Security. Security. Their code word for predictable, for exploitable. They had no idea how much of their security I'd been providing, the $20,000 for Diana's first failed startup, the $35,000 to cover my mother's disastrous jewelry line, the endless stream of loans for my father's investment club, which was really just expensive cover for sports betting. My accounts had been their personal lending institution, and I'd been programmed by guilt to keep dispensing funds. Everything changed 9 months ago. A health scare? Nothing terminal, but enough to make me stare at hospital walls and realize I'd been living everyone's life but my own. I had a 6-figure salary and a near-empty savings account. I had a family who measured my value in dollar signs. That afternoon, I hired someone. Her name was Rachel, a financial attorney with a reputation for taking no prisoners. I changed every password, opened accounts at a new bank, and started the meticulous work of building walls around what was mine. I created a holding company, Fletcher Secure Holdings, buried so deep in paperwork it was essentially invisible. I began investing smartly, quietly, for myself. And I started documenting everything. Every loan, every guilty text message, every time I'd covered someone else's mortgage payment. The evidence told a story of systematic exploitation that made my stomach turn. I also discovered things they'd hidden. The second and third mortgages on this very house. The liens against Diana's supposed assets. Their lavish life was a house built on sand, and my money had been the foundation they kept borrowing against. This Christmas would be my last performance. I'd tell them after dessert, clean and simple. I was done. I was leaving. But they, as always, had written their own script for the evening. Dinner was its usual excessive spread. My mother toasted to family bonds and shared prosperity, the irony so thick you could serve it with the gravy. Then, as the plates were being cleared, my father did his signature throat-clearing routine. The signal. Everyone's attention snapped to him. Before we dive into dessert, he began, voice dripping false warmth. There's a family matter we should discuss. An opportunity, really. My stomach dropped. Here we go, the annual shakedown, right on schedule. Diana leaned forward eagerly. My Series A funding hit a snag. The lead investor got cold feet over some technicality. But it's actually a blessing in disguise. We just need bridge financing, a temporary injection to carry us to the next milestone. She looked directly at me. 200,000, Sam. You've got that sitting in savings gathering dust, right? You never spend anything on yourself anyway. The room held its breath. Tyler nodded supportively. My mother deployed her pleading expression, the one that had worked for 3 decades. No, I said. The word landed like a stone in still water. Simple. Absolute. Final. My father's genial mask cracked. I'm sorry, what? I won't be providing bridge financing, I said calmly. That money isn't sitting idle, it's working, and it's not available. Diana scoffed. Working where? In your credit union account, earning 3%. Come on, Sam. Don't be difficult. This is family. Difficult, I repeated slowly. I've given this family over $450,000 in the last decade. Not 1 cent has been repaid. That's not family, that's a subsidy program. The temperature plummeted. My mother's hand flew to her throat. Sam, that's a horrible way to frame it. We're not some corporation. We help each other. Do we? I asked, meeting each pair of eyes. When have any of you helped me? My father slammed his palm on the table, making the crystal sing. That's enough. This attitude, this penny-pinching mentality, it's embarrassing. We're asking for one meaningful contribution to your sister's future, and you act like we're robbing you. Just stop being so desperate to say no and do what's right. I nearly laughed. They thought I was desperate. The projection was museum quality. My mother's eyes welled with practiced tears. He's right, Sam. It's painful watching you clutch at that little nest egg while your family needs vision. Stop acting like we're begging for crumbs. It's beneath all of us. Everyone at the table, Diana, Tyler, my uncle and aunt, who'd arrived from Portland, clueless to the real dynamics, nodded in unison. The united front against the selfish daughter, the miser who wouldn't share. In that crystallized moment, whatever hope I'd secretly harbored, that they might see me, value me, disintegrated. They had given me the perfect opening. I smiled, small and quiet, and my sister's eyes narrowed. What's funny? Nothing, I said, placing my napkin carefully beside my plate. You're absolutely right. This is embarrassing. I reached into my dress pocket and pulled out my phone. The room watched, confused. I found the contact I'd saved weeks ago, under a simple label, Exit Strategy. I put it on speaker and set it in the center of the table, right next to the gravy boat shaped like a swan. It rang twice before a crisp voice answered. This is Jennifer speaking. Verification code, please. Every eye locked onto the phone. My father's face darkened. My mother looked genuinely baffled. I leaned toward the device, my voice steady in the shocked silence. Initiate freeze protocol. Authorization code. Delta 79. A brief pause. Keys clicking. Confirmed. Jennifer's voice echoed in the dining room. Primary holdings, frozen per your directive. All linked secondary accounts and authorized user privileges suspended effective immediately. Do you want to proceed with secondary protocols? I looked up, directly into my father's widening eyes. Yes, I said. Execute now. For several heartbeats, there was only Jennifer's efficient typing through the speaker and the distant sound of Christmas music from the kitchen. What the hell are you doing? My father's voice was low, dangerous, but I caught the tremor of uncertainty. He was used to controlling the script. Jennifer came back, clear and professional. Secondary protocols confirmed. All scheduled transfers from protected assets to designated liability accounts have been terminated and flagged for review. Account suspension notifications dispatched to all secondary holders. Anything else, Ms. Fletcher? No, Jennifer, that's everything, thank you. I ended the call. The silence that followed felt like a physical presence. My mother found her voice first, high and strange. Secondary holders? What is she talking about? James, what accounts? My father didn't answer. He was staring at me, color draining from his face as understanding clicked into place. He knew. He knew exactly which accounts. Marcus was slower, just looked furious. Did you seriously just freeze your own money to spite us? That's the most childish, pathetic move I've ever— Not my money, Diana, I interrupted. My voice still that strange calm that comes after the storm passes. Your money! The accounts linked to mine. The authorized user cards in your wallets right now. The lines of credit in your names backed by my assets. What my bank so accurately labels family liability accounts. Tyler's perfectly groomed eyebrows shot up. He looked at Diana, real panic flickering across his face for the first time. Diana, my card. The platinum one. You said that was from your company's credit line. Diana's mouth opened and closed silently. My aunt leaned forward, confused. Sam, honey, I don't understand. What does this mean? It means, Aunt Carol, I said, turning to her, that for several years, my parents and sister haven't been spending their own money. They've been spending mine, or rather, credit extended against my savings and investments. I was the collateral for their lifestyle. My father finally erupted, shoving back from the table. That's a malicious lie. Those are family accounts. We set them up to help you build credit history. Really? I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. I didn't need much, just the right documents. I slid a bank statement toward my aunt. It was from last month. The account header showed my name and my father's. The transactions were a catalog of their life, country club dues, luxury car lease payments, a transfer to what I knew was my father's online sports betting portal, thousands in high-end department store charges. Notice the authorized users, I said, pointing. Card ending 3347, James Fletcher. Card ending 3348, Patricia Fletcher. Card ending 3349, Diana Fletcher. My savings account, which used to hold over $320,000, is security for this line of credit. Current balance, $9,000. My mother snatched the paper, hands shaking. You had no right. This is private financial information. This is your father managing our family resources. My resources, Mom, I said softly. The nest egg you mocked. The safety net you told me I was pathetic for clinging to. You've been quietly burning it for fuel. The scene began unraveling, not with shouting, but with a sickening comprehension on their faces. My father's bluster evaporated, replaced by frantic calculation. He was thinking about the notifications Jennifer mentioned. As if on cue, phones started buzzing. Marcus is on the table, my father's in his pocket, my mother's from her purse in the living room. A chorus of chirps that suddenly sounded like alarms. Diana looked at her screen, face going pale. Account access, suspended pending primary holder review. She looked at me, confusion replacing arrogance. What did you do? I removed myself as primary holder, I said. Or rather, I instructed my bank and holding company to recognize only my signature. The old joint accounts, the ones you all accessed freely, are closed. The financial connections are severed. My father's phone rang. He fumbled it, checked the caller ID, the country club. He silenced it, ashen. You can't do this, he whispered, but without conviction. He knew I could. He just never imagined I would. You forged my signature on those linkage documents, didn't you, Dad? I asked. When I helped you refinance after your investment club collapsed 6 years ago. That's when you tied everything together. You didn't just need my money for the refinance. You needed my credit rating to secure what you'd already maxed out. My mother began crying, not the delicate tears from earlier. These were raw, panicked sobs. You're destroying us? Your own family? On Christmas? No, I said, standing. I felt tall, solid, real. You were destroying me. You were destroying each other. I just stopped handing you the tools. I looked at my aunt and uncle, their faces masks of dawning horror. I'm sorry your holiday was disrupted. But you should know the truth. The beautiful house, the cars, the club membership, it's a fiction. Paid for with money they didn't have, secured by a daughter they didn't respect. I collected my unwrapped gift from beneath the tree. My aunt reached out, touching my arm gently. Sam, where will you go? I gave her a real smile. Small, but warm. Home, Aunt Carol. I'm finally going home. I walked through the foyer with its chandelier that was probably financed through my frozen credit line. I didn't look back. I opened the door and stepped into the sharp, cold night. It felt like my first real breath in years. Behind me, as the door swung closed, chaos erupted. Not loud yet, but building. My father's low, desperate voice trying to explain. My mother's weeping. Diana shouting something about dead cards. I got into my sensible, fully paid off Honda and drove away from the perfect house on the hill. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted and sad and overwhelmingly, impossibly free. The silence in my car wasn't empty, it was pregnant with possibility. The first act was over. The truth was out. But I knew them. Lies were their native tongue. They wouldn't surrender easily. They would regroup, counterattack, spin new narratives. And I was ready for all of it. The stillness of my apartment was a physical relief. No cinnamon-scented manipulation, no tension humming beneath Mariah Carey. Just the quiet hum of my refrigerator and distant traffic, a lullaby of normalcy. I set the charity gift certificate on my clean kitchen counter and took a deep, shaking breath. The adrenaline was ebbing, leaving a hollow ache. I had just blown up the bridge to my family. Even though it was a bridge built on lies and exploitation, the emptiness where it used to be was terrifying. My phone, face down on the counter, started vibrating. A soft buzz that quickly became frantic. I didn't need to look. Mom, Dad, Diana, Mom again, Dad again. Then texts started flooding in, a symphony of notification pings. I made tea, heating water slowly, watching the bag steep, the color bloom. The phone buzzed and buzzed like a trapped wasp on the laminate. When the tea was ready, I sat at my small table and opened the family message thread. Without reading a single message, I tapped mute. The silence was profound. An hour later, a different number called. One I recognized. Frank Morrison, my parents' attorney for 2 decades. His voice was gravel and fake concern. Sam, it's Frank. Listen, your father is extremely upset. We need to discuss this misunderstanding. You can't just freeze joint assets. There are legal ramifications. They weren't joint assets, Frank, I said steadily. They were my assets that they had fraudulent access to. I have documentation. I've already forwarded everything to my attorney, Rachel Hoffman. She'll be your point of contact. A pause. I heard him recalibrating. Rachel Hoffman from Stanton and Associates? His tone shifted, the grandfatherly act dropping. Sam, be reasonable. Bringing lawyers into a family matter. Your parents are devastated. Come to the house tomorrow. We'll work this out like adults. The time for working things out was before they forged my signature, I said. Any further communication goes through Ms. Hoffman. I ended the call. Rachel had been my secret architect for months, a razor-sharp financial attorney who'd helped me untangle the web of exploitation. She'd discovered the full scope of the forgeries, the links, the sheer audacity of what they'd done. After my call with Jennifer, the bank manager, I'd sent Rachel our prearranged signal. The show is over. She'd now be executing phase 2, formal legal notifications, cease and desist letters, and initiating a forensic audit. The next morning, I went to my sanctuary, the downtown library. Among the stacks, surrounded by old paper and quiet focus, I felt safe. I had work to do. Using the public records terminal, a skill Rachel had taught me, I started pulling documents. The property deed was my first shock. The second mortgage I knew about was actually a fourth. The house was leveraged to its expensive gutters, but the permits were more interesting. Over the past 3 years, my father had filed permits for major renovations. New roof, complete electrical rewiring, foundation work, master bath remodel, work that had never been done. I cross-referenced the permits with contractor licenses. The company listed trace back to a P.O. box and a shell corporation. Then I looked at the bank statements I'd printed from my evidence folder. Large disbursements labeled contractor services and home improvement had been paid from the line of credit backed by my savings. The dates matched the permit approvals perfectly. They hadn't just been living off my money. They'd been creating paper trails for phantom renovations, likely to inflate the theoretical value of the house and secure even more lending. The house wasn't just a lie. It was evidence of fraud. My phone showed another call from Frank Morrison, then a text from Diana. You have 48 hours to fix this or you'll regret it. I ignored both. Her threat was hollow. Her power, like theirs, was borrowed, and the lender had just foreclosed. I spent the afternoon at Rachel's sleek office downtown. She greeted me with a firm handshake and professional satisfaction. The notifications have been delivered. The freeze is holding. I filed a preliminary injunction, preventing them from transferring or further encumbering any linked assets, including the house. They're locked out. She spread copies of my discoveries across her conference table. These phantom renovations are textbook fraud, she said, tapping the permit forms. Classic money laundering disguised as home improvement. The bank holding those mortgages will be very interested. This is loan fraud. Hearing it stated so plainly made it real in a new way. This wasn't just family drama, it was criminal. What happens now? I asked. Now they choose, Rachel said. They can accept that their access to your finances is permanently revoked and deal with the consequences. Or they can fight. Given their pattern, they'll fight. They'll paint you as unstable or claim you authorized everything. I have the medical reports from my health scare, proving I was of sound mind. And I have years of journal entries and emails where I questioned the loans and was gaslit. Excellent, Rachel nodded. Keep them. The first wave will be emotional manipulation. When that fails, it'll be legal. We'll be ready. As I left her office, winter darkness was already settling. I drove across town, not to my apartment, but near their neighborhood. I didn't turn onto their street. I parked blocks away and walked. The house looked the same from outside, a perfect glowing dollhouse in the twilight. But watching from the shadows of a massive oak across the street, I saw the cracks. The living room curtain jerked aside. My father's silhouette paced. Another figure, Diana, gestured wildly. The Christmas lights weren't twinkling tonight. The house was dark except for frantic interior lights. A sleek sedan I didn't recognize sat in the driveway. Frank Morrison's car. The War Council was in session. I stood in the cold, watching the paper house. I thought of all the Christmases inside, the performances, the quiet desperation, masked by glitter and glamour. I thought of my own complicity, my years of saying yes when I meant no, confusing obligation with love. Part of me, the little girl who just wanted to belong, ached to walk up that driveway, open the door, make it stop, to unfreeze everything, accept their apologies, go back to being the silent financier of their dreams. But the woman I'd become, the one who'd faced mortality and chosen life, stayed rooted beneath the tree. That house wasn't my home. It was a crime scene, and I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the witness. My phone vibrated. A text had broken through the mute from my mother. Your father is having heart palpitations. This is your fault. Are you satisfied? The old hooks, sharp and familiar, dug deep. Guilt surged, that ancient poison. I stared at the words, breath fogging in the air. Then I thought of the phantom contractor, the forged signatures, the hundreds of thousands in debt they'd built on my back while telling me I was selfish. I typed back, fingers steady. If he's unwell, call 911. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not an ATM. I hit send, turned my back on those glowing windows, and walked to my car. The heart palpitations were probably stress, or maybe another performance. Either way, I couldn't fix it. I had my own healing to do. The battle lines were drawn. The paper house was crumbling. I just had to be strong enough not to get buried in the rubble. My mother's text was surgical, designed for maximum paralysis. For a few hours, it worked. I sat in my apartment, heart racing, imagining my father collapsed, an ambulance, the hospital. But Rachel's voice echoed. They will use every weapon in their emotional arsenal, Sam. Fear, obligation, guilt. Expect it all. I didn't call. I didn't text back. Instead, I called my father's cardiologist's office, Dr. Patterson, whose direct line I'd saved years ago during a real scare. His receptionist confirmed he wasn't on call, and my father wasn't listed as an emergency admission at any local hospital. Not proof, but enough to steady my nerves. The heart palpitations, like so much else, were likely theater. The next morning, the real war began. First, the social media offensive. My phone lit up with notifications. Aunt Carol sent a gentle message. Sweetheart, your mother is beside herself. Your father isn't well. Can we talk? But beneath her message, in our extended family group chat I'd muted months ago, a different narrative was unfolding. My mother had posted, not a direct attack, a masterpiece of victimhood. A photo of the empty Christmas table, candles burned low. Caption, when the season of giving meets the coldness of taking, praying for healing. Family first. The comments from her circle were a chorus of support. So sorry, Patricia. Some people have hearts of stone. Family always, no matter what. Stay strong. Then Diana's contribution on her professional network. Learning harsh lessons about who truly has your back when times get tough. Forward, always. Hashtag resilience. Hashtag entrepreneur life. It was laughable, but it painted a picture. The ambitious daughter betrayed by a bitter sibling. I didn't engage. I screenshotted everything and added it to the digital file Rachel and I maintained. The second front was legal. A courier arrived before noon with a thick envelope from Frank Morrison's firm. I signed for it, hand only slightly trembling. Inside wasn't a lawsuit. It was a demand letter. It accused me of financial elder abuse for freezing accounts my elderly parents depended on for survival. It claimed I'd unduly influenced our grandparents years ago to leave me their small inheritance. A complete fabrication. They'd left me books and their wedding china. It demanded I immediately restore all access, provide a full accounting, and attend family mediation at Frank's office, or they would pursue all available legal and equitable remedies. I almost laughed. They were accusing me of financial abuse. The gaslighting was Olympic level. I scanned every page and emailed it to Rachel. Her reply came within minutes. Predictable and baseless. Do not respond. I'll handle. The third front was the direct assault. Late afternoon. I was packing books when my intercom buzzed. I wasn't expecting anyone. The screen showed Diana, alone, face controlled but angry. She buzzed again, insistent. Part of me wanted to ignore her, but another part needed to face this head-on. I pressed the talk button. What? Let me up, Sam. We need to talk. Sister to sister. No lawyers. We have nothing to discuss, Diana. Dad's in the hospital, she shouted. Control cracking. Is that what you wanted? Just let me up for 5 minutes. The guilt knife twisted, but I remembered the call to Dr. Patterson's office. Which hospital? What's his room number? I'll call directly. A pause. Too long. They're running tests. He's an emergency. Look, just buzz me in. No, Diana, if you have something to say it to the camera. Her face contorted. The polished entrepreneur mask fell away, revealing something raw underneath. You selfish bitch, she hissed, words tinny through the speaker. You think you're so smart? You have no idea what you've done. You've destroyed everything. I stopped bankrolling the destruction, I corrected. There's a difference. That money was family money, she spat. We built that together. Dad built that. You just happened to be the boring one who saved it. We were putting it to work, making it grow. By losing 85% of it in 5 years? I asked. Diana, your growth looks a lot like embezzlement. She slammed a fist against the brick beside the intercom. You're dead to me. Dead. But you're not walking away with what's rightfully ours. We'll drag you through every court in the state. We'll tell everyone what a lying, manipulative psycho you are. That health scare? We'll say it made you paranoid, unstable. Who do you think people will believe? The successful daughter and her devastated parents, or the bitter spinster with a vendetta? The words were designed to wound, and they did. But they also clarified everything. This wasn't about love or even money anymore. It was about power. Their power over me was slipping, and they'd use any weapon to reclaim it. I looked at her furious face on the grainy screen. Say whatever you need, Diana. Do whatever you need. But understand, I have every statement, every forged document, every email where Mom begged for another loan to cover your failures. I have proof the house is a paper fortress. And I'm not hiding anymore. Your next move. But choose carefully. The truth isn't on your side. I released the button. She stood there another minute, staring up at the camera, chest heaving. Then she kicked a trash can, sending it clattering, before stalking back to her luxury car that probably wouldn't start much longer. I walked away from the intercom, legs weak. The confrontation left me shaking but clear. There was no going back. No reconciliation. This was a fight for my future, and they'd declared themselves the enemy. That night, Rachel called. I've drafted our response to Morrison's letter. It's beautiful. We don't just deny their allegations. We present a detailed list of their fraudulent activities backed by evidence. We offer them a deal. They walk away, agree to complete financial separation, and we refrain from filing criminal referrals for forgery and loan fraud. If they refuse, we escalate. They'll refuse, I said tiredly, but certainly they can't afford to accept. It would mean admitting everything. I know, Rachel said kindly. So we prepare for escalation. The bank holding the mortgages has been formally notified about the suspected fraudulent permits. They're launching their own audit. When that happens, the paper house falls. And Sam, they're going to blame you for that too. They'll say you tipped off the bank out of spite. Let them, I said, looking out my window at the city lights. My reflection ghosted over them. I looked tired, but my eyes were steady. I'm done living in their fiction. Let them tell whatever story they want. I have receipts. The war council in their glowing house was plotting. But in my quiet apartment with a lawyer who believed in facts and a future I was building myself, I wasn't just defending anymore. I was preparing to win. A week passed in tense silence. The muted phone still flickered with contact attempts, pleading, furious, threatening. But I'd stopped even glancing. The noise was static from a station I no longer tuned into. My energy focused on two things: packing for Seattle and building an ironclad case with Rachel. Then on a gray Tuesday morning, the first domino fell. And it wasn't one I pushed. My phone rang with an unknown local number. Something made me answer. "Hello, Ms. Fletcher." "This is David Chen from Risk Management at First National Bank. We hold the primary and secondary mortgages on 1242 Willow Creek Drive." My parents' address. My blood went cold, then hot. This was it. "Yes." "How can I help you, Mr. Chen?" "We're conducting a review of certain high-value properties," he said, his tone making clear this wasn't routine. "We've received conflicting information regarding substantial renovations on this property used to justify recent credit increases. Our records showed disbursements for a new roof, electrical rewiring, and kitchen renovation. Yet our latest exterior inspection photos show the original roof and the same outdoor electrical panel." I closed my eyes. Rachel's prediction was precise. "I'm afraid I can't speak to any renovations, Mr. Chen. I don't live at that address." "But you are listed as a financial guarantor on the associated credit products," he pressed. "The ones secured against your savings, which we understand have been frozen." "That's correct," I said carefully. "I've recently become aware of irregularities regarding my financial connection to that property and its owners. I've retained counsel, Rachel Hoffman. I can have her contact you with relevant information." Pause. Paper shuffling. "Hoffman from Stanton and Associates. Yes, that would be helpful." His voice changed, becoming less adversarial. He was a banking professional. He recognized a top-tier law firm and understood what it meant. I wasn't a confused daughter. I was a prepared client. "Thank you, Ms. Fletcher. We'll be in touch." I hung up and immediately called Rachel. The bank called. "They're auditing the house." "Perfect," she said, and I could hear the smile. "That's our first domino. They'll find the phantom renovations, they'll call in the loans, your family's reaction will be instructive." The reaction came faster than expected. That evening, my intercom buzzed again. This time, my mother. Her face on the screen was shocking. The perfectly styled hair was disheveled. Her makeup was gone. She looked a decade older and desperately afraid. "Sam, please, please let me in. I'm alone. Just me." Her voice cracked. Every instinct screamed no. This was another tactic, but the raw terror in her eyes looked different from the performed tears of Christmas. This felt like someone watching the ground vanish beneath their feet. Against my better judgment, I buzzed her in. I opened my door, but stood blocking entry. She emerged from the elevator, clutching her coat. She looked small, diminished. "What do you want, Mom?" "The bank," she whispered, eyes wide. "They called your father. They're saying the renovations were never done. They're talking about fraud, Sam. They could take the house." Real tears spilled over, cutting tracks through pale skin. It's all falling apart. Diana's funding collapsed. Our cards don't work. Nothing works. And now this. I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just hollow observation. "The renovations were never done, Mom. The money went elsewhere. You know that." "We were going to do them," she insisted automatically. "The timing, the contractor issues." "There was no contractor," I said flatly. "It was a shell company. The money went into your accounts, Dad's betting, Diana's ventures. You lied to the bank to get more credit using my savings as collateral." She flinched like I'd slapped her. The denial was on her lips but died. The evidence was too concrete, the bank's voice too real. The facade crumbled, not into apology, but into staggering, selfish despair. "What are we supposed to do?" she wailed to the universe. "Where will we go? This is your fault. If you hadn't frozen everything, we could have covered it. We could have fixed it." And there it was. Even at the cliff's edge, the blame was mine. "No, Mom," I said quietly, "but absolutely. You can't fix a lie with more money. You only dig deeper. The fault is yours. The forgery, the fraud, the decades of taking while pretending it was love." She looked at me then, truly looked, and I saw horrible realization dawn. Not remorse for how they'd treated me, realization that I was no longer a resource. I was an obstacle, a witness, and I wasn't moving. "You hate us," she breathed. "I don't hate you," I said truthfully. "Hate would mean you still had power over my emotions. I'm indifferent. You're no longer my responsibility. You're adults who made terrible choices. Deal with the consequences. We're your family, the last weapon." "Family doesn't do this," I said, gesturing to her, to the mess she represented. "I'm leaving. I'm moving to Seattle. I suggest you use the time before the bank forecloses to figure out your next steps. But don't contact me again. All communication goes through Rachel Hoffman." I stepped back and began closing the door. "Sam!" Her shriek was pure panic. "You can't do this. You can't abandon us. I'm your mother." I paused, door open just a crack. I met her terrified, furious eyes. "You stopped being my mother a long time ago," I said softly. "You became my creditor, and now the debt is called." I closed the door, the lock engaged with a firm click. I heard a sob, then stumbling footsteps down the hall. I leaned against the door, breaths coming short. I had faced her. I had held the line. It felt like victory, but tasted like ashes. Rachel was right. Their reaction was instructive. Confronted with consequences, they didn't seek amends. They sought to reclaim me as their resource. The first domino had fallen. Instead of trying to stop the chain reaction, they were trying to throw me into its path. The war wasn't over, but a major battle had just been won. They knew I wouldn't save them. The last illusion shattered. Now they were cornered, and cornered animals are most dangerous. The silence after my mother's visit was the most unnerving yet. For 3 days, nothing. No calls, no texts, no social media attacks. It was as if they'd vanished into the crumbling paper house, plotting their final move. Rachel warned me this was the calm before the storm. They've tried guilt, threats, direct confrontation. They've failed. Now they'll go nuclear. They'll aim to destroy your reputation to weaken your position. She was right. The storm broke not with a phone call, but with a public spectacle. It started with a local community forum online, filled with garage sale posts and lost pet notices. Someone submitted a heartbreaking story about a local family being financially devastated by a vindictive relative. No names, but the details were thinly veiled. The hardworking parents, the entrepreneurial daughter, the bitter, unstable sister who'd suddenly cut them off, jeopardizing their health and home. The comment section, populated by my parents' social circle, was a festival of outrage. I know exactly who this is about. Shameful. Some people are born without hearts. Family should come first, always. Then it escalated. Diana gave an interview to a local business podcast. Again, no names, but the story was there. The visionary entrepreneur whose breakthrough was sabotaged by a family member's vendetta, forcing her to shut down operations and lay off her small team. She spoke in lofty terms about betrayal and resilience, painting herself as a martyred innovator. The most damaging strike came 2 days later, a formal complaint filed with the state's Adult Protective Services. The allegation, financial exploitation of vulnerable adults. My father, with Frank Morrison's help, had officially lodged it. The document claimed his declining cognitive function following a recent cardiac event left him unable to manage finances, and that I had seized control of his assets, frozen him out, and was withholding funds necessary for medical care and basic living expenses. When Rachel called to tell me, her voice was grim. "This is serious, Sam. APS investigations are no joke. It's a brilliant, dirty move. It frames you as a predator and forces you into a defensive position. It also creates a public record of the allegation, damaging regardless of outcome." I felt sick. The sheer malicious creativity took my breath away. "What do? "We fight with facts," Rachel said, hardening. "We have his medical records from the last 5 years showing no cognitive issues. We have bank records showing money flowed from you to him, not vice versa. We have evidence of forgery. We present it all to the investigator. But Sam, be prepared. They may visit your workplace. This is designed to humiliate and isolate you." The call came the next morning. A polite but firm woman from APS named Gina Martinez. She asked if I'd be available for an interview. I said yes, with my attorney present. We scheduled it for my apartment that afternoon. Gina arrived exactly on time. She was in her 40s with a kind but unreadable face and sharp eyes. Rachel was there, calm and professional. We sat at my small dining table. Gina explained the process. "I'm here to assess the complaint's validity. I'll be speaking with your father as well. I need to understand the financial relationship." Rachel slid a thick binder across the table. "This should help. What you've been told is a complete inversion of reality. My client is not the exploiter. She's the primary victim of a long-running financial exploitation scheme by her parents and sister." For the next hour, Gina silently paged through documents. She examined side-by-side comparisons of my father's forged signature next to his real one. She saw bank statements showing the hemorrhage of my savings into their accounts. She read emails where my mother pleaded for just one more loan to cover Diana's debts. She saw the permit fraud evidence Rachel had obtained from the bank. Her expression remained professional, but I saw the slight tightening of her lips. When she finished, she looked up. "This is extensive." "It's fraud," Rachel said simply, "and the APS complaint is retaliatory fabrication. We have a letter from Dr. Patterson stating Mr. Fletcher has no cognitive decline diagnosis. His recent hospital visit was for stress, not a cardiac event, and he was discharged with a clean bill of health. Gina nodded slowly, turned to me. Ms. Fletcher, why didn't you report this sooner? It was the question I'd been asking myself. I took a breath. Because they're my family, I was taught family helps no matter what. I confused being helpful with being used. It took a health scare to realize I was funding their lives while having nothing for my own. Freezing the accounts wasn't an attack. It was self-preservation. Gina held my gaze, then looked back at the binder. I'll need to verify some of this independently, but if accurate, the complaint is without merit. In fact, she added, steel entering her voice, the evidence of exploitation appears to flow in the opposite direction. I may need to open a new case. After she left, I slumped in my chair, emotionally exhausted. Will she believe it? I asked. She's a professional who follows evidence, Rachel said. The evidence is undeniable. This will backfire spectacularly. But the damage to your reputation publicly, that's harder to undo. The public smear campaign intensified. The local story got picked up by a larger online outlet. My name still wasn't used, but it was an open secret in our community. I started getting looks at the grocery store. A woman from my mother's book club pointedly turned away from me in the produce section. Then the cornered animal made its most reckless move. I was leaving my workplace after a final meeting when I saw him. Tyler was leaning against my car, arms crossed. He looked haggard, eyes blazing with desperate energy. We need to talk. Now. We have nothing to talk about, Tyler. Move away from my car. You're going to fix this, he said, voice low and venomous. You're going to call your bank and your lawyer and undo everything. You're going to tell APS you made a mistake. You're going to sign power of attorney to your father. Or what? He pushed off the car and stepped into my space. I could smell stale coffee and desperation. Or I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I'll tell your new employers what a litigious, unstable person you are. I'll post every private thing I know about you online. That health scare? I'll say it was a mental breakdown, that you hallucinated the whole fraud story. The threat was ugly and specific. It crossed a line the other tactics hadn't. Pure annihilation. I didn't step back. I held my ground, looking up at his furious face. Do it, I whispered. He blinked. What? Do it, I repeated louder. Post whatever you want. Tell whoever you want, but understand, for every lie you tell, I'll release a document. The forged signature, the phantom contractor invoice, the bank's fraud audit findings. You want to play reputation games? Let's play. But I have truth. And truth, Tyler, has a weight gossip can't lift. For a second, I saw pure hate in his eyes. Then fear. He saw I wasn't bluffing. He saw the quiet, compliant sister was gone, replaced by someone with nothing left to lose. He leaned in. Final hissed threat meant only for me. You'll regret this, I promise. He shoved past me, knocking my shoulder, and strode away. I got into my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely start the ignition. I had faced him down, but the encounter left me feeling soiled and exhausted. They were pulling out all stops, getting dirtier and more personal with each failed attempt. The cornered animal was lashing out blindly. I drove home, winter dusk closing in, knowing the storm wasn't over. They'd thrown their worst at me. Public shame, legal manipulation, personal threats. I had weathered it. But the cost was written in the new lines on my face, in the hollow feeling where my family used to be. The battle was brutal. But the war was still mine to win. They'd shown all their cards. I hadn't even started playing mine. The encounter with Tyler left a residue of dread, but also solidified my resolve. They had thrown their worst punches. Public slander, fraudulent APS claim, direct threats. I was still standing. Bruised, yes. Exhausted, absolutely. But standing. Rachel called it attrition warfare. They were trying to wear me down, hoping I'd break before they did. What they didn't understand was that my breaking point had already passed 9 months ago in a doctor's office. Everything since was just cleanup. A few days after the parking lot confrontation, Gina Martinez from APS called Rachel. Her investigation was concluding. Based on evidence, she was dismissing the complaint against me. Furthermore, she was formally opening a case against my parents for financial exploitation of me, a vulnerable adult under the statute due to coercive familial relationship and the scale of fraud. The first domino had triggered a chain reaction no one expected. Rachel relayed the news with grim satisfaction. They tried to use the shield as a sword. Now it's turned on them. This creates a legal record of their abuse. Powerful leverage. I felt no triumph, only weary justice finally tilting. What about the public smear campaign? That requires a different response, Rachel said. A passive one. We let truth do the work. She advised against public rebuttal. It gives their narrative oxygen. Right now, it's a one-sided story in a small pond. We have facts. We deploy them surgically where it counts. Where it counted was the bank. First National completed its audit. The findings were catastrophic. Loan fraud based on fabricated renovations, inflated asset valuation. They issued formal notice of default and called in the full balance of both mortgages and the linked line of credit, a sum in the high six figures. They gave my parents 30 days to pay in full or face foreclosure. This was no longer about my frozen accounts. This was the fundamental collapse of their entire financial house of cards. The paper house was officially condemned. The news must have hit them like a physical blow. The silence from their end became absolute, a true silence of shock. I imagined the chaos inside 1242 Willow Creek Drive, the panic, the recriminations, the frantic calls to other banks, to Frank Morrison, to anyone who would listen. A week after the bank's decision, I received a letter, not from a lawyer, but from my father, his familiar handwriting on thick stationery. Sam, we are at the end. The bank is taking the house. Your mother is a wreck. Diana has nothing. We have nothing. Is this what you wanted? To see us homeless and broken? We made mistakes. We should have been more transparent. But what you're doing isn't justice. It's cruelty. You have power to stop this. You can unfreeze the accounts. You can talk to the bank. You can save your family's home. Come to the house Sunday. Let us talk. No lawyers. Just family. We can find a solution. We're still your parents. You're still our daughter. Please, Dad. The letter was a masterpiece of revisionist history. Mistakes. Not transparent. Far from forgery and fraud. A plea wrapped in a guilt trip. A final desperate attempt to re-engage me on emotional terrain. I showed it to Rachel. They're capitulating, she said, analyzing it. They're not admitting fraud, but they're admitting they can't win. They're suing for peace. On their terms, of course. Your surrender. I'm not going, I said. I think you should, Rachel replied, surprising me. I stared at her. Why? It's a trap. It's an opportunity, she corrected. Right now, this is a financial and legal battle. But for you, it's also emotional. You need closure, seeing them in the reality they created, hearing what they say when all options are gone. It might give you that. And practically, it might give us a recorded admission. She insisted I wear a discreet recording device. If they threaten you, we have it. If they admit anything, we have it. You're under no obligation to speak. Just listen. Sunday arrived cold and bright. I drove to Willow Creek for what I knew would be the last time. The house looked different in harsh winter light. Shabby, paint on the shutters chipped, a gutter hung loose, the perfect facade was cracking. I parked on the street, not the driveway. I took a deep breath, activated the recorder in my coat pocket, and walked to the front door. My mother answered. She looked hollowed out, dressed in simple clothes I hadn't seen in years. No pearls? She didn't speak, just stepped back. The interior was shocking, boxes everywhere, the expensive art gone from walls, probably sold. The house smelled of dust and defeat. My father sat in his armchair in the living room, a shell of his former self. Diana was nowhere to be seen. Sit, my father said, voice gravelly. I remained standing near the doorway. I'm here. I'm listening. My mother wrung her hands. Sam, look around. This is it. We have to be out in 3 weeks. We have nowhere to go. I said nothing. The bank won't negotiate, my father continued, eyes fixed on the cold fireplace. They say fraud. The permits. He couldn't say it fully. We need money for a deposit on an apartment, moving costs, just something to start over. You have the money from the line of credit, I said. The one based on fake renovations. Gone, my mother whispered. Diana's venture needed one more infusion. We thought, of course, they'd poured the last stolen money into the final failing dream. The irony was complete. So you want me to give you more? I stated. We want you to help, my father insisted, finally looking at me. There was no anger left, just bewildered desperation. How can you stand there and watch this happen? We raised you. We clothed you. We sent you to college. You did, I agreed. And I repaid that 100 times over with interest, with my financial security, with my peace of mind. The debt is paid, Dad. In full. He flinched. So that's it. You wash your hands of us. You washed your hands of me long ago, I said quietly but clearly. You just kept them out to take from me. I'm not giving you any more money, not a single dollar. You need to figure this out. Sell what's left. Get jobs. Downsize. Do what everyone else does. My mother let out a choked sob. You're heartless. No, I said, turning to her. I was heartbroken for years. Now I'm just realistic. Truth has weight, Mom. You built a life on lies, and that weight has finally crushed you. I won't crawl under the rubble with you. I turned to leave. This was the closure Rachel spoke of. Not reconciliation, but a final clear-eyed look at the wreckage. Wait. My father's voice stopped me. He stood, unsteady. For a second, I saw the ghost of the man who used to intimidate me. If you walk out that door, you're no daughter of mine. You are dead to this family, forever. I met his gaze. I felt nothing. No sting, no grief. Just final release. I was dead to you long ago, I said. You just forgot to stop spending my inheritance. I walked out of the house for the last time. I didn't look back. As I drove away, I didn't feel the crushing guilt I'd feared. I felt a vast, empty space, a space where their noise used to be. It wasn't filled with happiness, but it was clean. It was mine. The truth had its weight, and I had finally set it down. The space left behind after the final meeting was immense. It wasn't quiet peace at first. It was roaring silence, like aftermath of an explosion where your ears still ring. I moved through final days of packing in a trance. Legal and financial battles were winding down, but the emotional war was over. I had walked off the battlefield. The emptiness where my family had been was both terrifying and liberating. Rachel handled the fallout. My parents, true to form, didn't go quietly. They attempted to sue the bank, claiming they were misled. It went nowhere. They tried to get the APS finding overturned. Denied. Frank Morrison, sensing a sinking ship, withdrew as counsel. Reality was inescapable. They would lose the house. They'd have to find a small rental using what little they could salvage from selling remaining furniture and my mother's jewelry. Diana, according to a tidbit Rachel heard, had finally taken a corporate job. A massive blow to her self-styled visionary identity. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I just observed it from a distance, like watching a storm recede on the horizon. There was profound sadness for the lives they'd chosen, lives of such desperate pretense they'd sacrificed their only genuine connection, however flawed. My own life began filling the empty space slowly, with things I chose. My promotion was official. I was moving to head a new financial literacy program at a community college on the West Coast. Meaningful work, far from cold numbers. It felt like purpose I'd built myself. A week before my move, clearing out a closet, I found a small dusty box labeled in my grandmother's handwriting, for Sam's dreams. I'd forgotten about it. She'd given it to me at college graduation, telling me to open it when I felt lost. In the chaos of following years, I'd buried it. I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside weren't valuables. There was a handwritten note from her. My clever girl, don't let the world make you small. Your mind is your greatest fortune. Use it to build a life that feels like sunshine. Beneath it were a few old savings bonds she'd bought me as a child, now matured, and a list she'd made of my childhood dreams. Marine biologist, bookshop owner, person who helps people understand money. Tears streamed down my face, not from sadness, but from a piercing sense of being seen. She had seen me. She had believed in me. And I'd spent years letting other people's noise drown out her voice. The bonds weren't a fortune, but together enough for a down payment on a reliable car for my cross-country drive. A gift from the past. A vote of confidence for the future. The day before I left, Aunt Carol called, voice hesitant. Sam, I know things are broken. I don't pretend to understand it all, but I want you to know I love you, and I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening. Her words were balm. Thank you, Aunt Carol. That means a lot. I heard you're moving. Your mother told me she's devastated. But Sam, she's devastated about the house, about money. I'm not sure she's devastated about losing you, and that breaks my heart for you. Hearing someone else acknowledge that painful truth was strange relief. It's okay, I said, almost meaning it. I'm going to be okay. I know you are, she said firmly. You always were the strong one. You just didn't know it. The morning of my departure was clear and cold. I loaded the last box into my packed car. I took one final look at my empty apartment, a blank slate. Then I got in the driver's seat, entered coordinates for my new city into GPS, and pulled away from the curb. As I drove through city limits, a weight I hadn't known I was carrying began to lift. With every mile, the static of the past year faded. I played music loudly. I sang off-key. I stopped at a roadside diner and ate pie for breakfast just because I could. The emptiness inside me wasn't empty anymore. It was being filled with the hum of the engine, the unfolding map on my screen, the sheer, expansive possibility of the open road. I wasn't running away. I was driving toward toward a job I wanted, toward a coast I'd never seen, toward a life where my worth wasn't measured by what I could provide others, but by the peace I could build for myself. Halfway through Nebraska, my phone buzzed with a calendar alert I'd set months ago. It simply said, "The first day." I smiled. It was. I still thought of them, wondered where they'd end up. I felt flickers of old guilt, but they were just echoes now, growing fainter. They had made their choices. I had finally made mine. The cord wasn't just cut, it had dissolved. I was untethered. And for the first time in my life, that didn't feel like falling. It felt like flying. The empty space was gone. In its place was the widest, bluest sky I had ever seen. The Pacific Ocean was nothing like I'd imagined. I'd pictured postcard calm, but my first sight from the cliffside highway was a roaring, endless expanse of gray-green power throwing itself against rocks with a sound like perpetual exhale. It wasn't peaceful, it was alive. It felt like truth I needed to hear. My new apartment was small, a studio with a view of other buildings, but it had large windows filling it with the unique soft light of the coast. The first night I slept on a camping mattress surrounded by boxes, and I slept more deeply than I had in years. No background hum of dread, no anticipation of the next demand, just unfamiliar silence of a city where no one knew my name, my past, or what they could take from me. Starting the new job was a gentle shock. At the community college, I wasn't Sam the human ATM or Sam the disappointing daughter. I was Professor Fletcher, the new head of the Financial Empowerment Initiative. My students were single parents, retirees wanting a second act, young adults navigating their first bank accounts. They looked at me not with expectation, but with curiosity, some with hope. I taught them about compound interest, but also about the psychology of spending, about setting boundaries, about the difference between want and need. With every lesson, I felt like I was healing a part of myself. I bought furniture piece by piece, choosing things I loved, a deep teal sofa, a bookshelf for my grandmother's books, a sturdy desk. I didn't consult anyone's taste but my own. The process was slow, deliberate, profoundly satisfying. Rachel kept me updated from afar. The foreclosure was finalized. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment across the city from their old neighborhood. Diana's corporate job was middle management at a tech firm, far from CEO of her own startup. According to the last legal filing Rachel saw, they were making payments on a structured settlement to repay a fraction of funds they'd taken, a settlement I'd insisted be paid, not to me, but to a debt relief charity. I didn't want their money. I wanted the principal acknowledged in court. And it was. The news was a distant data point in my new life, a story about other people. I felt distant pity but no pull. The hooks were truly gone. 3 months after my arrival, I was invited to a faculty gathering at the home of a colleague, Marcus, who taught sociology. It was a casual potluck in a backyard strung with fairy lights. I brought store-bought hummus, feeling shy, but people were warm. They talked about books, about frustrating campus parking, about a local hiking trail. No one asked about my family. No one needed anything from me. I stood by the fence watching the easy laughter and felt strange, quiet joy seep into my bones. This was what ordinary life felt like. It was revelation. Marcus brought me a drink. "You settling in okay? West Coast treating you well?" "It is," I said. And it was the simplest, most complete truth. "It really is." "Good," he smiled. "It's nice having you here." Later that week, I finally made the trip to the actual shore. I drove to a quiet, rocky beach, not the tourist spot. The wind whipped my hair, and salt spray stung my lips. I took off my shoes and walked to the very edge where foam hissed over sand. The water was freezing. It shocked my system awake. I thought about the Christmas dinner, the phone on the table, the word initiate. It felt like a story from someone else's life, a dark fairy tale. The woman who had done that was me, but she was also a stranger, a desperate, courageous stranger fighting her way out of a coffin. I had come out the other side, not unscarred, but whole. The lies they told at that dinner had been the catalyst, not for my destruction, but for my rebirth. They said I was desperate by withholding money. In reality, I was desperate for my life, and I had received it. I sat on a driftwood log and watched the horizon until the sun began its spectacular descent into the water, painting the sky in colors I had no names for. In that moment, I felt gratitude so vast it was almost painful, not for the hardship, but for my own strength, for the quiet voice inside that finally shouted enough, for the grandmother who left me a note in a box, for the lawyer who believed in facts, for the ocean reminding me some things are too powerful to control, only to respect and admire. I drove home as stars emerged, salty smell clinging to my skin. My small, imperfect apartment felt like a palace. It was mine. Every spoon, every book, every quiet moment was mine. The new shore wasn't just a coastline. It was solid ground I had built beneath my own feet. The past was a country I had left. I was a citizen of this new, quiet nation of one. The war was over. I had not just survived, I had arrived. A year to the day after the Christmas dinner that changed everything, I found myself not in a house filled with tension and glittering lies, but in a bright, sun-drenched classroom. My students, a mix of ages, backgrounds, and dreams, were presenting their final projects for my Financial Foundations for Life course. One by one, they stood up not to talk about getting rich, but about gaining freedom. Maria, a single mother of 3, presented a simple color-coded budget that would finally get her out of payday loan debt. "It's not about the numbers," she said. Voice firm with pride I recognized. "It's about knowing no one can take this choice away from me." An older man, Henry, shared his plan to downsize his home to unburden his retirement. Not as loss, but as strategic gain for peace. A young woman named Beth, who reminded me a little of Diana, but with earnest eyes, outlined a savings plan for nursing school, rejecting her family's pressure to take on prestigious debt for a university degree she didn't want. As I listened, a profound sense of completion settled over me. This was the legacy I was building. Not a fortune, but a fortress of knowledge for others. I was breaking a cycle, not just for myself, but in some small way for them too. After class, I walked back to my office, which now held photos of the rocky coast, my thriving bookshelf, and a framed copy of my grandmother's note. My phone buzzed, an email from Rachel with the subject line, "Case closed." The final legal threads had been tied. The structured settlement was fulfilled, all civil actions dismissed, the APS case formally archived. Legally, financially, it was over. The paper trail had reached its final page. Attached was a scanned document, a formal release. At the very bottom, I saw my father's signature. It looked frail. I felt nothing but a faint, distant echo of the storm. I typed a brief reply. "Thank you, Rachel, for everything. You did the hard part. Go live your life, Sam. It's a good one." That evening, I drove to my favorite spot on the coast. It was a clear, cool night. I sat on the same driftwood log, wrapped in a thick sweater, and watched bioluminescent waves crash against shore, leaving fleeting trails of ghostly blue light in the dark. It was magic, real, natural, demanding nothing from me. I thought about the quiet nation I had built within myself. Its constitution was simple: respect, honesty, and the sovereign right to peace. Its population was 1, and it was thriving. I didn't hate my family. I had moved beyond them to a place where they were no longer the defining geography of my heart. They were a historical footnote, a cautionary tale of what happens when love is twisted into transaction. I hoped in some detached way they found their own version of peace, however small. But their happiness was no longer my responsibility. Their disaster no longer my emergency. My story wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. I hadn't taken anything from them that was ever truly theirs. I had simply taken myself back. The woman who smiled at the Christmas table, who made that call, she wasn't a villain. She was a rescue worker pulling her own soul from wreckage. As I stood to leave, a couple walked by, laughing, hands linked. I felt a pang, not of loneliness, but of anticipation. My quiet nation was open for connection now, for real connection built on mutual ground, not shifting sand. There was space for that now. I drove home under a sky full of stars I was still learning the names of. My phone was silent, and the silence was no longer a weapon or a burden. It was a gift. It was the sound of my own thoughts, my own choices, my own life. If you're watching this, maybe you're in the middle of your own Christmas dinner disaster. Maybe lies are being told right to your face, and the people who should love you are nodding along. Maybe you feel like you're drowning while they call you selfish for wanting to keep what's yours. I'm here to tell you that the quiet voice inside you, the one that says, "This is wrong," that's not weakness. That's your strength whispering. You can build a new shore. You can found your own quiet nation. It starts with one word. No, it starts with one call. It starts with choosing yourself, not out of spite, but out of survival. And then one day, out of love. Truth has its weight, but you don't have to carry their lies anymore. You can set it down. You can walk away. And you can build a life so full of your own light that the shadows they cast can't reach you anymore. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between your family and your freedom, Tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. Share your story. You're not alone. And if you're fighting your way out, hit that subscribe button. We're building a community here, not of victims, but of survivors, of founders of our own quiet, powerful nations. Thank you for watching. Now go live your truth. It's waiting for you.